Welcome back to The First, The Last, The Nerdom, the podcast where we dive into the first, the last, and everything in between across film, television, and pop culture. And once again, we're rolling out one of our favorite ongoing segments, our shows, Binge Worthy. The rules are simple. We pick a TV show we're curious about or revisit, watch the first 3 episodes, and then decide if it earns the right to be fully binged or if it's just better enjoyed in smaller, more controlled doses, I guess. This week, we're stepping into the strange, brilliant, and deeply influential world of Mr. Show with Bob and David. Created by Bob Odenkirk and David Cross, we don't know who those guys are. This sketch comedy series didn't just push boundaries, it gleefully ignored them. With sketches that bleed into one another, reoccur in unexpected ways, and spiral into surreal, dark, and often uncomfortable territory, Mr. Show helped redefine what sketch comedy could be on television. We'll be talking about how the first 3 episodes established the show's unique voice, its fearless approach to satire, and how much of its DNA can still be seen in modern comedy today. Does Mr. Show still feel sharp and subversive decades later? And does its unconventional structure make it more bingeable or something better savored over time? So get ready for absurdity, social satire, and jokes, and that absolutely refuse to play it safe. This is Binge Worthy. This is the first, the last, and the nerd. And here we go. Chase the rabbit here. My God, I gotta get to. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So, with that being said, I'm ML, and I'm joined by Tom. We are the hosts of the weekly First, Last, Nerdom. Is our home base on our website. You can also find us and 443 other people who agree with us in some way, shape, or form, and just want to see what we have to say. Always up there on YouTube. You can check out our latest and greatest. You can see we continue on our Giallo January as it goes on. There we go, and as well as some of our other cool stuff that we are into here. But with that, I'll hand it off to Tom, who is our chief Reddit officer, I guess, the guy who handles the Reddit.
Yes. First, last Nerdum. I think that's you that's permanently banned up at the top. I haven't got
That's
banned
correct.
yet.
Yeah, I was
I
banned a
have
long
been,
time ago, but for some reason they still allow me to log in, so that's fine.
yeah. No, I've been deleted off of various subreddits. I have been banned from from posting on certain ones, but yeah, because that iron pesky self promotion. But yeah, I'm also on X under First Last Nerdum. Those are the 2 places you might find me promoting our stuff. And then you're on X as well.
I am on X as well, at Sofa King Jewish _. You can find me, catch me or Tom, or of course, you want to have a conversation, there's the community tab off of the YouTube page there, like where we occasionally try to post things occasionally. Like I think we're good about posting there maybe once or twice a quarter, of course, as it goes. But this one, I had asked you, hey, well, might as well. And you said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And what I was going to save this for this, but yeah, so I was able to, and you could watch this several places. No more have to reach for the credit card and turn on the cheap plan or the expensive plan on HBO Max or whatever, or however there, or you can find it elsewhere. But I specifically look for, and I stumble across it. I did go sailing on the 7 seas. I'll just leave it that way. But it got me thinking, and I looked it up, and I was able to find it. I actually was able to find a DVD version of this with a commentary, which was fun. So, and of course, season 1 really is only, I think, 4 episodes, I think. So it's not too big of a thing, but there were 4 seasons. The commentary was okay. They kind of yucked it up a little bit, and some of the things that they talked about were a little bit more contemporaneous to that time and place that they were doing the commentary. So
Yeah, it was very much we covered the Why Skid You Know last week, with very 2000s comedy going there. This is very much 1990s. The first season 1995. So it had a definite 90s vibe to it. I think again, sketch comedy. I think they're a little bit more mature on this, in the sense that the comedy is a little bit more sure-footed. I would say that the more jokes landed, whereas the Whitest Kids, it was sort of scattershot, whatever landed. And if it didn't, that's okay because we're going on to the next joke here. Whereas this one's a little bit more refined. Not to say it's not didn't reach above childishness at points, but it was a little bit more confident in the comedy. David Cross, obviously a stand-up comedian, along with being an actor, and Bob Odenkirk, I know him mostly as an actor, but I don't know if he's done any stand up. But I remember back in the 2000s, I was living in St. Louis, and I would go back to visit my family in Arkansas. It was a bit of a 6 hour drive. You try to break up that monotony however you can. One time I went to the local Best Buy and bought up a bunch of various stand-up comedians albums just to listen to on the drive. I figured that would make it a little bit more entertaining, and David Cross was one of them that I picked up. And so whenever I think of David Cross, I often think about my drive to Arkansas and listening to his stand-up. It was one of the more entertaining ones. He's definitely got a style to himself, and it lends itself, and you can see his undelible impression on the show. There's an interesting mix of Bob and David, but yeah.
Yeah. This was mid '90s up through late '90s comedy for sure. It had a refined. It was of a more refined, even in the pilot, which was famously, I believe their season one budget was very low, but they didn't care. They did talk about that a little bit, like how if they had a beard, they would kind of comment on the thing. And David Cross was saying how, you just didn't give a shit. And sometimes we would just use black tape or electrical tape or something like that, because that's not really the point. Like, it's not like anybody's, according to him, it's not like anybody is going to be coming up here and be like, wait, who was that guy in the beard? Who was that guy? And I was going to say too, they spent $12K of their own money to film the initial pilot. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, and I think you said that you watched the DVD version of it, but yeah, I think that's how I saw it back in the. I didn't see it when it originally aired because I didn't have HBO at the time, but I did buy it on DVD, so it's buried out in my storage stuff out back. I haven't gone through and really dug into my DVDs, but it's out there. I believe I got all 4 seasons, but yeah, I probably listened to that commentary at one point, but yeah, this time I watched it on the old HBO Max. So
Yeah,
nice having there's something to be said for streaming in that you don't have to fumble through and try to find the physical media part of it, but
it's true.
you could just pull it up, and if you paid for no commercials, you get that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I did not. Obviously, I was a kid, but as I got older, I would occasionally be able to go. A relative or so and so or a friend, would have
Hmm.
cable or whatever, and then you would be able to catch an episode here or there. But I remember what the ones that I did see, and I didn't see. I saw a mismatch of them. Of course, when I got older, I revisited it, and it was fun. Of course, by then, you had other really funny shows with David Cross. He had blown up by that point. So had or Bob Odenkirk, excuse me, Robert Odenkirk. But this one, the initial run, this is essentially like the first run was abysmal. Like the first
Yeah.
season barely caught on. It was a train wreck to get going. It got going, but it hung on, and it was like it was a Friday at midnight kind of show. So that was the time that they were fighting for weekly
Yeah. Yeah, and there's
or not
as I was
weekly,
watching it, it
whatever.
was interesting to see the various other people that were acting in the show. And there's a lot of connective tissue to the old Ben Stiller
Jack
show.
Black. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That is so true. Yeah. Sarah Silverman and Jack Black and
Janine Garofalo.
yeah, Jeanine Garofalo. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've talked about Tim and Eric a little bit here and there, or I'm sure we'll run into them eventually because we seem to be fans of satire and kind of these things. I would say that this Mr. Show is a bridge between Monty Python and Tim and Eric.
Yeah, because whereas The Wise Kids, their comedy is more of
A little bit,
get the little skit going and then go on to the next thing. Whereas this one, especially the first 3 episodes I rewatched, there's that connective tissue through the whole thing where like the first episode, Ronnie Dobbs keeps showing up, and there's the it's entertaining in that I like how their sketches don't really end, but they kind of bleed into each
right.
other's.
They're seamless. There are no blackouts.
So it's very engaging to pull you in that way. Whereas you may be like, oh well, after the sketch, I'll go. I need to stop it and go off and do something. Whereas this, you really don't have that moment. It's like there's not a good stopping point. So by the time you get done, you're going to stop, but you've watched the whole episode before you get to the point where you could find a stopping point. It just kind of bleeds one skit into the next, and yeah, talking about seeing people. Brian Posehn is fun to see in there, and Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, he's in there as well. He's a talented stand-up comedian. I was really into his stand-up work for the longest time, and so when he became, the juggernaut that he is with being the voice of SpongeBob, it's kind of interesting.
That's awesome.
A
Yeah.
lot of these, a lot of these people, I know them from stand up or various things, and you got to think it's kind of fun seeing that group of talent there. Like I said, Jack Black was a bit player in this, whereas he's become what he is today.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just reading part of the first sketch, and
Ronnie
to
Dobbs.
like, yeah, how he gets arrested in every city. Like, there's like a running gag with some of the characters that adds to the short, punchy, and weird thing. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it
but
looks like there's 30 episodes, but 4 seasons. So yeah,
right,
it's not a
yeah.
huge time sink.
Yeah, they got a lot more, obviously, as they got better, as the show got more, or the studio got more confidence that they should be done more with that. So trying to find but there wasn't that. Yeah, that's right. I
Four
was thinking
episodes,
there
yeah.
was only 4 in the
It's,
first. Yeah, because then it pops up from there.
yeah, 5 or 6. Okay, so the first 2 seasons about 10, and then you got 10 for the 3 and 4. That makes sense.
Yep, that's when it really hit its stride when it got more mature too, and a lot smoother too, obviously, with this. But yeah, I was gonna say the primer that I was gonna run folks down with. This is kind of like where you just kind of have to watch it. It's not like you say the white WKUK. They're a lot more. They're completely different. This is a lot more free, a lot more open. I think more people are going to be more open to it than the other one. And this is already kind of a taste too, right?
Although
If
they both oddly enough begin with Hitler, so there's there's that connective tissue.
Well, there's the thing about David Cross is his stand-up. He is so hilarious, and he's got me now that I'm like reading some of the things it reminds me of, and has me giggling about like our favorite character. But you had Arrested Development, and that was like really what that went on for a long time too, and it was like it's like a staple for. It's like Always Sunny, it was kind of always going to be there for a
Hmm.
long time. I do think
Yeah,
that
and
went on a little bit too
David
long, but
Cross, his comedy's more kind of the absurdist kind of.
right.
Whereas it seems like Bob's more character driven. Whereas well, David has some very fascinating characters, but yeah, it's more of a absurd, run around in a dress sort of.
Well, right. Well, and just completely play it straight, and just like really commits to he has 100% commitment to the act. Although they did have the Bob Odenkirk was talking about how as this show was starting, Conan was going. They were talking about like the time and kind of the things, and I've been, for whatever reason, I keep getting pulled into these late night show things, and like I've been spending a lot of time listening to Conan O'Brien's podcast, and some random ones in between. But it's kind of funny to see some of these other characters and how they interact, and how just how funny they are when they get. Some of the commentary was it was just as it was, but some of it was a little bit later on, like when they got to gel, it was a lot funnier because there's more to talk about.
Right. With a lot of stuff I kind of nerd out over. I nerd out over comic books, horror, but comedy is one of those things that I really nerded out back in the day, especially during the 90s. I was very keen, like I said, on stand-up comedians, and when they would go on to make various TV shows. Obviously you got the heavy hitters like Seinfeld, but you also have people like David Cross and various people. Would you make a connection with a stand-up comedian and their comedy sort of your bag? You really pull for them, so wherever they do like a TV show, you get really invested in it because you know they're making it big, and I knew them back in the day when they were a stand-up comedian, and then you have that, even though it's they call it paracultural now, but yeah, you do have that connection that you form with these various people, and so whenever you're watching Mr. Show and you see all these different characters running around besides Bob and David, it's always fun to see. It's almost like running into an old friend, It's like, oh yeah, there's Tom Kenny, there's Paul F. Tompkins, it's just fun to see those, and back in the day, during the 90s, they were at their prime, the youngest, and they have the viv and vigor of really getting out there and doing something. Obviously, they've kind of came into their own, especially like with Bob Odenkirk. He's an action star, for
Because
God's sake, but
nobody,
also
yeah,
yeah, and
that's out. I think Nobody Two's coming out soon or is already out. I have no idea, but
yeah, I think it's gone, came and gone by now. But yeah, and Bob has Better Call Saul, which fed off of the Breaking Bad, and then his co-star in Better Call Saul has gone on to do Plurbius. So
this is
a
true.
lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. Did you have a favorite skit of the three shows, or do you have like recurring ones that are your favorite that are like the Ronnie Dobbs one is like the Fuzz
I don't
and
know. I really enjoy Breaking a Dollar. He wants just four quarters, so it goes up the ladder. It's just that minutia of people not being able to make a decision, and the absurdity of it going all the way up to the president. But there's that whenever you're in an office situation, I'm sure you've experienced it where no one wants to make a decision, and
right.
the buck literally gets passed.
You can just see it go around, and then eventually it'll come back, and then we'll have a meeting about it, and
Yeah,
it'll happen again.
and then someone so far removed from what that decision makes, that they just make it off the cuff. Everybody else is kind of agonizing over whether or not, and then someone's like, whatever, maybe make an arbitrary decision, and then you have to live with it.
Right, right. Well, that's
And
it.
it eventually impacts Ronnie Dobbs, as it always does.
I was gonna say you're right about the seamlessness, the nature of the comedy kind of does force you to kind of. There's been a few times like where I was kind of like, wait, what? I was like, wait, that now that's because it switches up so quick because the background guy could become the next, pulling the lead. You kind of pull into it a little bit after a while because like these guys play multiple, they wear multiple hats.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lot of times with the sketch comedy that we watch is mainly made up of men, so eventually they end up in a dress, whereas this show has an interesting mix of female performers as well, so whether or not they want to put on a dress, that's very voluntary. Also, I was going to say that a lot of times with those shows, the the different actors they start playing to type. Whereas with this show, you really could interchange both Bob and David and the various roles. They play very similar characters. They're very similar in nature, although just looking at them, they do look different. But yeah, they kind of they can both do that. Bob sort of does the southern characters quite well, and the gay characters David does play quite well. But you could see them swapping characters. It's not like they're kind of locked in. There's a lot of especially like with the breaking the dollar sketch, they kind of call each other, so they're kind of playing similar characters as you go up the ladder. They both do them quite well.
Yeah, Bob called David violently bald.
Yes,
It
I
was
can
it
see
was
that.
it was it was fun to just there's certain
Mhm.
people have certain personas and like certain looks that are that are only aging more and more. For crying out loud, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and these they're quite young at this venture. And you can tell because like when David, you put on a wig on David, he loses like 10 years. He becomes like a little kid,
Right, right,
He
right.
gets quite youngish looking. But yeah. Uh and there is that scene or sketch where they're the Bob's on his honeymoon and David's like
The third
the
wheel.
third wheel.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny.
Where he's wearing the very 90s pajamas
Right.
with the various colors. That's a very like I said, there's a distinctive 90s flavor to the show as well, which is at the time very trendy, whereas now it's very nostalgic looking at it.
It it that that I didn't think about this too much, but the format that I watched it on was 4:3, and I was 480p, lower quality, whatever, which is fine, but it
Yeah.
kinda it lended an extra feel of '90s for sure. Like, I remember being, being a kid and watching this and, like,
On your big
even smaller.
CRT. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. If you're lucky, or, the 13-inch that's up on the dresser, if
Yeah.
you're lucky, if you're a kid
Yeah,
or
you're
whatever.
you're balling if you had a 28 or 32-inch
Yeah, yeah,
CRT.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, but the funny thing is that you would never really it was small, but you didn't really worry about it because you shut up and watched what you could watch, whatever
Yeah.
for
You
or if it
watch
was
the
like
idiot
the
box,
yeah, yeah, or I remember the if we did have cable, that would always be a treat to have the free HBO for a weekend, during the holidays or what, something like that.
Yeah, the various times.
Yeah.
And then if that was paired with Skinamax, you were made.
Also, yes, again, I was a very young man when I was a teenager, so yes, absolutely. There's, always that thing too, or like Red Shoe Diaries. You get to know who David Duchovny is like, how do you know who David Duchovny is? Where did you see him from, and where did you see it at? But it definitely reminded me. Do you have any history? Well, I guess you gave some for the stand-up, but, for you, that's the draw, but, yeah, this is always fun to watch. I'm absolutely gonna, enjoy watching this in the background for me, but I think it holds up. What do you think? I do think that you have to be fans of Bob or David or even a young Jack Black, or some of the and it's not like he's, like, in every sketch, he's not. They're
You
in
have the
they're
3 holes, though.
yeah. Yeah, have the salt and pepper throughout the show, but
Yeah, it's one of those shows where, if you, have a friend or a coworker that's, really into it, you develop a language where you just have to name a sketch and that you're laughing. But yeah, it's one of those shows that, maybe not super popular, but people that like it are, of like minds and, enjoy kind of the absurd like you said, it's sort of like kind of, pre-configures, Tim and Eric. Some of their they're it's not as absurd as Tim and Eric gets, but it has that flavor. You still have a home base, but you haven't gone into outer space quite yet, but you're starting to get out there. And Yeah, with HBO, a lot of times I didn't have HBO because I just never wanted to pay a extra for outside of basic cable. But yeah, I would definitely pick up the DVDs, like the shows that I wanted to see, like Sopranos. So I kind of developed binge worthy back then. You'd buy a whole season on
Oh
DVD, and
yeah.
you start watching it. You go, well, just one more episode. I'll do one more episode.
I remember. I remember too. You would always have or buy or try to buy, like a couple seasons of a show. Once that became a thing for you to be able to, not necessarily binge watch it, but like watch it on a rainy day or something like that too. In fact, binge,
Hmm.
or get into that groove. I was going to say this is a bridge, like I was saying before. Like before, sketch comedy for Saturday Night Live, maybe the state, or catchphrase heavy kind of thing, and then you have this, Mr. Show, and then after you have Portlandia. That's just is a little bit, it's absurd in its own way. Key and Peele, which is more refined as standard sketch comedy, that's also hilarious. But it's not quite far as out there. I guess it kind of does have a lot in common with, I think you should leave, maybe. I don't know, because there's the kind of a always rolling nature to it. Anyway, I digress. This is a definite watch, and one that you should watch is a foundational, I think, show for a comedy.
Yeah, and I think it's also similar to Whitest Kids in that they don't get too topical. A lot of their comedies are based on what's happening day to day during the '90s. So even the things that they're kind of making fun of, like infomercials, they're kind of universal to the point where even if you don't get the reference, it's still funny. Kind of comedy. Uh, some comedy can be really dated, in that you're watching it and you go, "Oh, well, if I'd watched it back in the '90s, it would've been really funny." But, you're kinda looking at it intellectually as opposed to finding, in the moment that it's funny, whereas Mr. Show is always universally funny.
Yeah,
There
I was gonna
there's a
say
lot
that
of yeah.
they do a Tinkerson or whatever, the senator, and it's kind of like an amalgamation of, like, a bunch of people. That's not necessarily any one particular person.
That they're making fun of, yeah.
Right, yeah, from the '90s. It's just kind of an older, generic, old, out of touch,
Yeah,
jerk,
yeah,
holier than thou
yeah,
type.
and there's always someone trying to, muck up somebody's fun, so, it's a bit universal in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So this has been brought to you by, as well, I think we're coming up here to the caboose, but, we wanna thank our sponsor, Globo-Chem, for sponsoring the show.
Yep, and, Pit Pats will show up here in a minute to give you a hug.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, this is not background TV. It's definitely one that, encourages you to keep watching to see where the camera's gonna go next and who's gonna be in front of it, or what wacky.
Might just see SpongeBob.
Yeah, you might. I think that's about it, but, this has been, binge worthy, and we'll be looking forward to, next week.
Yeah, tell us what your favorite sketch comedy is.